The Red Roses set up a historic final, sold out Twickenham as Australia looked to break down the Eden Park fortress. Welcome back to the Rock and Roll Show. Well done. It was an absolutely massive weekend in Bristol with the two World Cup semi-finals. England getting the better of France and Canada pulling off a huge result against the former world champions, which will be the former world champions, the Black Ferns. What do you make of the action?
Really exciting games again from the women. Both started off really well. Quite a first half for for France versus England, but that second half was just brilliant, and England really came into their own and displayed why they are where they're meant, why they are, and likewise with Canada. A very dominant first half display, and then topped off with a very good second half display as well, just to control the game and see it out, and not like New Zealand get too close. But yes, this is the final that everybody kind of wants to see. I think it's been too many times it's New Zealand and England, so it's good that New Zealand's reign has ended and Canada have shown what they're all about.
It's a repeat of that 2014 final, and as you say, we haven't seen this final since that. But we'll start with that first semi-final on the Friday night. We spoke about it, the anticipation of it, the Friday night lights at Ashton Gate, the world champions facing the world number twos, and it was an absolutely huge atmosphere, huge occasion, and Canada, boy, did they come out firing, didn't they?
Yeah, it was, like I said, that first half, 4 tries in the first half against a New Zealand side. It was just kind of, I think it shocked so many people that they just, they'd started off so quickly. They had intent to just go at them, and boy, did they, because, those first 4 tries were just brilliantly worked across the board. So it was
a great catalogue of tries as well, wasn't it? In terms of they were playing in tight and then getting it to the width and getting it into the wingers. I thought Hogan Rochester on the wing for Canada was huge in that. Pelletier, who got man of the match, was just pulling the strings and basically pulling the Black Ferns wherever she wanted them, really. And I think if we're talking about those 4 tries, we've got to talk about that. The Goody try just before half time. Obviously, Canada race into a 17-0 lead. Then the Black Ferns have a little bit of pressure back. They get a try back, well worked. But that 4th try, was that the killer, do you think?
Yeah, I think that was definitely the nail in the coffin. I think it had to go to De Goody to score it, to really see it out. I think after that, there was no coming back. The words will have been said, obviously, in the New Zealand dressing room at half time, and the 2 tries that they got back in the second half were really good as well. But I think even the first try in the second half by Canada, it was just over and done with there and then. And I think they knew it, the Kiwis, but just a really well-rounded performance by Canada. They did everything right around the breakdowns. They were really, really well behaved, very good discipline. Again, as I mentioned last week, the kind of whipping the ball around, kind of fancy stuff, and keeping the ball alive, not really taking as many phases, was really good too. So yeah, just deserved finalists, and I, at this moment in time, can't call who's gonna who's gonna win the final. But give it to the end of the episode.
We'll definitely come on to that there in the episode. I think they showed such a ruthless side to themselves. I think they've always been athletic. Canadian teams, that's always been something that's been a huge plus point for them, but it was sort of the game now, which teams like the Black Ferns obviously have, especially in knockout rugby in semi-final stages, and I think they just showed all of it in this game. It was almost like a perfect performance. I know they let in a couple of tries in that second half, but it never really looked like they were going to give it up. It never really looked like they were going to lose. It always looked like they were really in control of the game and where it sort of went where they wanted to take it, really. And you speak about Sophie De Goody in that first half. I mean, absolutely superb. Great, like that offload from Pelletier to put her through, as you say, is really, really did sort of sucked the wind out of New Zealand. And then when they came out in the second half, the Tessier try, again, another chip and chase. They had a couple of chip and chase tries, which were lovely, and then a couple of just up the gut and then get it wide tries as well. So just some great variety as well in their attacking play.
Yeah.
In terms of the Black Ferns, do you think they could have done any more, or do you think it was just it was Canada's time and they were just set up to do it, and this is perhaps maybe just more of a transitional phase for the Black Ferns?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, you can't stay at the top forever as many people would like them to. I think it's time. Yeah, it's definitely time that someone different came in and took the spotlight in the women's game. And Canada have been knocking on that door for ages. Yeah, as I say, it's definitely about time that they get their chance in the final. And display what they can do. And, no joke, they will give England a run for their money. And it'll be really interesting to see which way the game goes. But no, I completely agree with you. I think it was not necessarily so much what New Zealand were doing wrong. I think it was just Canada wanted it more. They showed up on the day and just absolutely went at them. So, yeah, credit.
Yeah, no, they didn't give them a moment to breathe, really, even in that second half when they were trying to get back into it, New Zealand, and sort of looking at the dangers of Canada going into this week, Saturday at Twickenham, 4 p.m. game, the final, a historic final, is sold out Twickenham. What do you highlight as their biggest danger points, really, going into that game?
I think breakdowns is going to be the big thing for England to combat. I think it's similar to what I've said in the past about Argentina around the breakdown, is that they're fast, trying to secure that ball as quickly as possible. And I think England were a little bit slow to that against France the other day. And I think that's where they probably leaked a couple of penalties and stuff. But we'll come on to that a little bit more. But yeah, I think that's going to be the area that will be of a nervousness around the England park, is probably that breakdown area, and how Canada, as I say, like to keep the ball alive. England have just got it, if they're going to tackle them, and it's got to be, do what they've been doing in the past with the 2-man tackles, just clear them out, get them on the floor, and see what they can create from a slower pace game rather than that quick pace that they like to go at.
So yeah, so I'll be playing that sort of quick, just front up, just get into them, quick with speed and physicality. Well, it was an absolutely superb performance. Can we just, before we move on to that second semi-final, as you briefly touched on, can I just ask the question, Sophie de Goede, has she been the player of this tournament?
She's definitely up there. I think, for me, it's bizarre to see a second row kicking for posts, because it just, I don't know, it just does something in my brain that is just a bit confusing. Get your player who can do it all. She's been brilliant. I think Peltier, like you say, she's been outstanding. I also think Bourdon for France has been one of the stars of the show. Obviously, Ellie Kildun, Hannah Bottoman. There's a lot of players who, whose names fly about, and you're like, yeah, they've had an unbelievable tournament. But certainly Sophie de Goede is in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you sort of place her in there. You place a couple. I'd say you place a couple of Black Ferns. I know they lost, but you place a couple of them in there. I think Sorensen McGee scores again. She's been absolutely prolific at this tournament. Waka, the outside centre as well, has been really, really good for the Black Ferns. And then you obviously look over to England, Meg Jones, Ellie Kildun, and Hannah as well. All these great players. But we'll move into that England game. So England managed to just stave off a really strong France effort, it has to be said. 35-17 was the final score. Probably a bit more of a margin than the game, I'd say, would have told you if if you're watching it. But yeah, France came out really fast at the start of that game, didn't they? What did you make of their attacking intent early on?
I think it's good. It's always good to put a benchmark out of how you want to play against a team, because obviously if you come across as being quite scared or quite nervous in a game, then an opposition of that standard will just silence you and will keep you quiet. But if you come out fighting and you've got intent, then absolutely you can win a team over just by doing that. And that's absolutely what they did. They had the most territory in the match, the most possession, made England tackle, almost double what they did in the first half and in the game, I think, towards the end. But yeah, they just really wanted that attacking rugby and making them work for the performance and work for work for their tries.
It certainly made them work a lot, especially in that first half. I think it was something with 5 minutes to go. France were on an expected tries of 2.6, and they had only scored one try. So I think it was maybe their attacking prowess, which we spoke about before the game last week, was all there to show. But do you think the lack of you look at examples of areas where France could have finished better. Ménager goes through. She's got such an easy pass to the left-hand side. She keeps a hold of it just too long, and then the chance goes. A forward pass in the corner where Ménager scores. It's just like these chances. Would you highlight as that the big chance miss to sort of pile the pressure on England in that first half?
Yeah, I think obviously missed opportunities like that, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because how likely are they to come around again? It's, you've just got to take the opportunities as they come. But it's no fault to England that they put the pressure on. They make them make those mistakes. It's not all down to just France making those mistakes. They've been put in a position to make those mistakes. So yeah, I think it was. If you're a French fan, you'll obviously be disappointed because as you say, two expected tries in that first half. There was 8 red zone entries, and you only come away with 5 points. So yeah, it
was a similar story for England really in that first half as well. I mean, they had a lot of the red zone entries as well, but I think it was something like 4 or 5 knock-ons in that area. So they weren't really clinical themselves, but I think it was only a matter of time when you're not taking the chances and the other team aren't taking the chances either, that it's going to switch. In that second half when they get into the sheds at halftime, when John Mitchell has a chat to his team, and it was clear when they came out in the second half that the intensity was up, that they, especially for that first try with Cocaine, probably butchering the pronunciation of that, but when she powers over there, that's an example of them tightening up and sort of just saying, right, we're entering the red zone here, we're going to make sure that we get over and we're just going to use our power game. I guess the question is, in the second half, how clinical what did you make of England's game plan, and sort of how they sort of started to take their chances rather than miss it in as they were in the first half? What do you think improved, really?
I think it was just clinical. Like you say, they were making the most of the opportunities they had, and using what's got them to where they are in this tournament, which is their forwards game and that power drive, especially for that the Cocaine try, and even just like the other bits as well. It's just that focus the power in the middle, and then when you need to, spread it out wide, get it out to the quicker players like you Meg Jones, you Ellie Kildunst, Abby Dowers, and whoever. So yeah, I think clinical was just the overalling message from that second half from England. Obviously, France came in a couple of times, but when those tries came, you still didn't think, oh, France are going to, they might fight back and they might win this. I think it was always clear that England were going to see the game out and take the victory. So yeah, massive well done to the girls.
Yeah, no, it was hugely clinical, as you say, and sort of using the power game and then spreading it wide was kind of like how Canada really got the better of New Zealand, really. But the France did show a bit in that second half, and they showed why they were a contender in this tournament. They scored tries with Abby, their winger, and Koundé scored 2 tries, of course, and they did make it tough. And there was a certain stage where I think that's. That Abby try goes in and it's 14-12. What did you make of England's ability to sort of just manage the game from that point now?
I think that's definitely the area that they need to look at, because, as you say, the RB try and the Condé try, they came from moments where they're on their own try line, and they're trying to focus on the middle but forget about what's going on further afield. And they've got massive 1-2 man overlaps, which it happens, but for a team of England's quality, you've got to be able to manage that better. So Canada as well, they will be incredibly clinical on the final next week. At doing that, they'll focus it very, very closely, like all teams do, but they'll just England have got to be better on that kind of one-to-one man marking of don't overcommit into the middle and make sure you're dragging players out wide to make sure that you can at least try and cover off an attack like that. But it's not destined to happen every time. But for it to happen twice on the weekend against France, it's definitely a good indication of where issues could lie.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in front there, when Canada get that sort of a quick running rugby game going, it can be very hard to stop, and that's certainly something that I want to look at. I just want to highlight a couple of the key performers from England in this team. Especially even in the first half. I mean, Ellie Kildon, 2 tries yet again. Absolutely just back to her best. I think there was a lot of shouts earlier on in the tournament that she maybe wasn't playing her best rugby. Obviously, there was huge expectation coming into the tournament for her, but she was certainly back to her best in this game, wasn't she?
Yeah, that second try is genuinely mental.
Just like the smallest of it, like the mistake
Oh.
from the French backfield player, and then just like the pace, wasn't it?
Yeah, the pace, the change of direction, like everything about that try was just, it was just so nice to watch. Like you just knew as well, as soon as she got the ball, you were like, right, here's some magic coming, because yeah, she just absolutely bossed it. Like the first try as well, where she doesn't have to do a lot of work, but getting the ball kind of on the halfway line, you run round, do a little step inside, but that's what you've got to do to, you've got to be there to score them. And, more often than not, she's scoring them. And she is just demonstrating why she is the best player in the world at the moment.
Yeah, no, she was absolutely fantastic. A couple of others as well. I think Meg Jones was huge, especially in defence, really. I think obviously she provides a big running threat, but I think at the breakdown she was absolutely fantastic. A couple in the pack as well. I think Abby Ward, who's returning, obviously a Bristol Bears player, playing at her home stadium, in her hometown. Really, it was great to see. She had a great performance as well, and Hannah Botterman as well in that first half. 3 turnovers in that first half, and that was really key at that stage of the game to sort of keep England, from not conceding those points and perhaps forcing those errors, as you said, from France. Who would you highlight as those key players for England moving into next week when you compare the threats that Canada pose?
I think obviously the back three has always been a big thing for England, of like just being a force to be reckoned with. Breach, Abby Dowen, Ellie Kildon, that back three is pretty scary. And then you bring on Roland into that, and it's, they've got that great rotation. I think you're absolutely right. Meg Jones she's scary. I think, I wouldn't want to come up against her. And for her to be like one of that channel that, players are going to want to run down, and it's her that you're being met with. You're not going to want to use that option. But yeah, the front row in total for England, awesome. Bottomman, just class. Everybody, it's such a team effort, and there's not, you could give 2 minutes on everybody of why they're so important to this team. And I think that's probably where they've got the edge over Canada, is that individually they've got so much great talent in comparison to that Canadian side.
Well, that's the final on Saturday. England, Canada, sold out Allianz Stadium, Twickenham, which will be the highest ever attendance for a Women's Rugby World Cup game. Absolutely huge. 4 p.m. on Saturday, that game. We look at the key tactical battles here, and the key player battles, as we had sort of alluded to there. We've got De Goody against Abby Ward. We've got Kildon against Julia Schell. We've got Muir against Menon up front. Both players having a huge impact in both semi-finals. Tessier versus Meg Jones, and just a lot of these great sort of matchups going here. Where do you highlight the teams where each team could get at each other?
I think, like I say about Canada being very strong at the breakdown, is where it could hurt England. A couple of penalties they gave away because of holding onto the ball on the floor and similar offences. So that could be somewhere where Canada can hurt England. I think Ellie Kildon on her own can hurt any team, so Canada has still got to be wary that just because they're a good opposition, they're a good outfit, that she can't do a bit of damage. And I think through the backs, I think if you look at compare each team, I think the backs of England are stronger than the backs of Canada, but the forwards of Canada are also very strong. and I think probably a little bit better than England because they've got those hand skills. They've got the power, and with that, that's the good, quick flowing, expansive rugby that they like to play. So
Mm.
I think Canada can definitely, they've got to try and hit them where it hurts with that quick pace, but England have got to nullify as much of it as possible and really try and dominate the breakdowns as much as possible.
Yeah, well, that'll be a huge battle there at the breakdown as it was in that semi-final. You look at the cup, you look at both semi-finals, Dom, and I think you can see. Would you argue? And obviously, there's a lot of factors going into this, but would you argue that there's more fallibility, more weak points being shown by England in their semi-final compared to Canada?
Probably, yeah, because I mean, Canada had the tougher opposition and only conceded 2 points more than England. England only scoring 1 more point, so they're very close scoreline, very similar.
But you argue in terms of the game, like you'd say England didn't always seem in control, whereas Canada seemed more in control.
Yeah, I don't think I like to refer to people who a team when they play their final. You don't have to necessarily be. You may not necessarily reach the final or be in with a chance of a final, but a team in the group stages might play a really great game and get a win out of it, but the performance is that of what you'd put into a final. So I think England haven't had their final performance yet. They haven't had the one where they've gone, they've just shocked everybody and blown everybody out of the water. Was that the game though for Canada? Who knows? Because England did it a couple of years ago in the World Cup when they beat New Zealand, and it was just it was one of the best games of rugby England have ever played when they played in Japan. But then they had to go again and play against South Africa, and I think siphoning yourself up again just like a week later, that's a big mental toll that it can play on you. So I think England are going to be more prepared because it was okay, we've got France, we've beaten them before, let's just do what we do and get at it. But now it's like, right, we've got Canada, up your game one more time, the last time, and let's lift the trophy.
Well, that was it. You've answered that. Was exactly what my next question was going to be. Do Canada have that emotional capacity? Because I think they have beat the Black Ferns before, but obviously beating them at a semi-final stage of a World Cup is a different animal, as England will know, and beating the All Blacks in the men's game in a major tournament is a different kettle of fish. Do you think they have the emotional capacity to pull off another result?
Who knows? I mean, I know that's part of our job and why we're doing all this to reflect on that. But I'm
just curious because it's so obvious
Yeah.
that they have the physical capacity. It's just whether, like in this tournament, they've basically put to the sword every single. And I mean, England have as well, but I think to a lesser extent, especially when you consider the semi-finals. I think it's just interesting to sort of predict either one way or another whether that emotional capacity is there.
I think you always like to look at experience in these big moments, and Canada, they haven't reached a final since 2014. Is that going to be a really a big hill, too big of a hill to get over for them? England have been finalists every single year, bar one, in this World Cup. So they know, I know that all the players haven't started from the day dot, but it's ingrained in the English system that, we're winners, we get to a winning position. We might not always, be on top or win it, but this has got to be the year that we do it. We haven't got New Zealand to get in the way this time. So let's actually just, win this one because we deserve it. And we've been the best team in the tournament.
So it's sort of like that experience is really going to be key for England, really. You're saying, yeah. Do you see any sort of any way Canada can maybe cause an upset in perhaps the power game potentially, or maybe even the kicking? I think France seemed to expose a bit of a fragility in the backfield for England at certain points. Do you see any leeway going there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Canada could absolutely blow England out of the water and cause a massive upset. And it would be an upset because this World Cup has, created such a buzz in the country. And it's been, nice to see fans loving it so much, and, people falling in love with rugby from the women's game. It's going to do so much good for the English rugby side of things as well, not just for the women, but for the men's game as well. But yeah, I think Canada definitely, they could cause an upset. They could get a victory because, there could be an essence of complacency that comes into England. We're at home, we're at Twickenham. This is our day, but your day can still be ruined by someone else. So it's very viable.
There we go. Well, that's what we like to hear. It really could go either way. Canada looking for this is 11 years in the making for Canada. They're looking for that revenge from Paris in 2014 when England beat them 21-9 to win the World Cup. It's all on the line here at Twickenham. The Red Roses looking to make it 3 World Cups. Dom, if I could push you for a prediction, where do you think this one's going to go?
I'm going to say England by 5. I'm going to say Ellie Killdun hat-trick as well.
Ooh, wow. Okay. Right. That is an interesting one. I'm going to spice this up even more. I'm going to say Canada by 3. I just think the momentum is there. I think they are just showing so much. I think they've been the best team in the tournament, to be honest. And I think they've shown so much in this tournament, and I think they will have the emotional capacity to do it again because I think they've beat the Black Ferns before. I think there's just the momentum that they've had heading into this tournament. I think they'll just carry that on into the final, and they'll complete their first women's World Cup victory, and I think it'll be an absolute great moment for the sport, really, because it would be an expected victory. But yeah, absolutely buzzing for this one on Saturday. It's been an absolute celebration of rugby, this tournament, and it's been great to see how far the women's game has come, and it is all going to come to full head steam at Twickenham this Saturday. So we look forward to that. But we'll move on to the Rugby Championships because, of course, we've got round 5, the 2-week hiatus from our last bumper round of fixtures, which saw just more shocks, a record New Zealand defeat. And I will start with New Zealand, who face Australia at Eden Park on Saturday early dinner time. It'll be 5:05 over there. It'll be 6 a.m, 6:05 here. So you'll have to get up early and watch that one. But first v third, 1 point separating the two sides. So they'll all be getting those bonus points that have put them in the lead. Can Australia do it?
I think I said last week that I don't reckon they can, only because it's Eden Park, and I feel like that Eden Park record is just it's too unbreakable. Like, I think when we're talking about, the mental capacity and big moments and everything like that, I feel like this is just something that if you're representing the All Blacks, this is a game that you don't lose. You have to uphold this record that's been going for, over 30 years. So are you really going to be the side that ruins it? So there's so much pressure on these players that I think they've got to win it.
Yeah, well, they do have to win it. They absolutely do have to win it. The amount of pressure that's come on after that the record defeat, and New Zealand, they don't lose by 33 points. They just don't. And there's been a bit of pot stirring this week, so I'm just gonna add this into mix. There's huge pressure on Razor, and I'm gonna add a wee quote in here. See what you think about this, Don. This is Jack White, who's former Springboks coach and current Bulls coach, by the way. He said, "I honestly can't remember an All Black side being so dominated and humbled. For them to be disorganized and shambolic isn't the All Blacks' way." So I was unsurprised when I heard John Kerwin said he felt like vomiting as their resistance ebbed away. Now, that is quite the way of putting it from Jack White, and that certainly added a bit of fire into the mix there. It certainly added a bit of pressure when someone as high profile as Jack White coming out and saying that. How big a match is this for Scott Robinson when you take into account all the pressure that has been in the last week?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his job's on the line, isn't it, really? Because, like you say, New Zealand aren't a side to get beaten 33 points on their own patch, and it'll taste especially sour that it's been done by a South Africa team that, some people would say aren't flying at their best at the minute. That they also turned over by 7 points the week before, that have been beaten by, an Australian side who have been going through a transition. So, there's a lot that will be playing on his mind about this, but essentially don't get beaten by a side that have just just at the end of a transition phase. You are playing where you haven't lost in over 3 decades. And also, your job's on the line, so you might want to win this one especially more.
Well, how do you think they do win this one? Because you look at the two sort of sides and how they've performed in this tournament. The Wallabies starts fairly well, in most of their games, but they finish very well, is it? But they sort of seem to leave you opportunities, particularly off set pieces. I think Argentina found that. Where do you think this game will be won by either side?
I think it'll be won by whoever nullifies the other team's strengths. So it's not so much, okay, how are we going to win playing our game? It's how are we going to win, killing their game. And I think if you're New Zealand, the way to do that is to just get up in their face. They've got great line speed when they want to be. And I think, Australia, is so good at keeping that depth and then spreading it wide and then getting around the side. So I think line speed is going to be seriously paramount for New Zealand for this game. But for Australia, I think if they want to nullify, it's just play with pace, because that's what South Africa did. They came at them with power, they came at them with pace, and it just kind of like in that quote, it just kind of confused them and bamboozled them. And I think that's the way that they're going to get around this. But I just can't get this idea out of my head that New Zealand lose at Eden Park. I can't see it happening. But I would, as always, I'd love to be proved wrong.
It'll be an absolute fascinating watch. Just a couple of bits of team news for this game as we preview it. Cam Roygaard and Cortez Ratama, the two sort of first choice nines for New Zealand, are coming back in, as well as Patrick Tuipulotu and Cody Taylor as well, so strengthen the scrum half and hooker positions. So that'll be huge for them. Noah Hotham will be out of this game, so they won't have him. He performed, I thought, admirably in the last game. Narawa as well is out. For Australia, they'll have Jet Gordon coming back into the mix, as well as James O'Connor. Now that's a very interesting one, because James O'Connor had flown back to England to be with his new side, the Leicester Tigers, but he's going to be called back, which is great news for the Wallabies, and he'll be in contention for this one. He's got plenty of Bledisloe Cup experience. I remember him scoring many years ago, or watching clips anyway, of him scoring a last minute winner in Hong Kong in the Bledisloe Cup, which was a memorable one. But Rob Valentini is out as well. So that's the sort of the team news for both sides. And Alan Alatoa, Wallabies tight head prop, has spoke recently about building on the infectious support that the team's been having around the country, and how the game is sort of growing again. What do you think in terms of selections and way of playing? Where do you think Australia can get at this New Zealand team and build on that support?
I think obviously if your team starts performing again in a sport that is absolutely adored nationwide, there's going to be an excitement, there's going to be a buzz around it. And I think everybody could probably agree that New Zealand and Australia is a massive rivalry, not just in a rugby sense, being neighbouring countries, it's huge. I think however this game actually turns out, however this tournament turns out, the people of Australia are going to be so delighted with how they've played in this tournament, how they've played against the Lions. And it's just going to be nothing but excitement going forward into the Autumn Internationals and then eventually into the World Cup in a couple of years' time. But yeah, you'd love to be an Australian fan right now, because your team's doing well. I'm sure if Wales start to do well again in the near future, you'll be hearing all about it from Welsh fans, and they're not often ones to be quiet. So yeah, I think it'll be good. It's good to see Australia doing well again. But yeah, they can take nothing but pride away from this summer.
So what are your predictions then, Dom, for this game? What do you think is going to happen?
Again, I can't get it out of my head. I think New Zealand at Eden Park, it's just two things that are so synonymous with each other, and it's victories for New Zealand at Eden Park. So I'm going to go New Zealand to beat Australia by 2. I'm going to give Australia the Jews. I'm going to say it'll be close, but it's going to be squeaky bum time for New Zealand, and they'll get it over the line.
Well, I think both of us would probably like to, not that we're biased or anything like that, but I think we both quite like to see the drama of the Eden Park record being broken. But I do tend to agree with you there. I can't see the All Blacks. I think the All Blacks have a great history of bouncing back so tremendously from great losses. I mean, you think of well, even bouncing back from the Argentina defeat with the victory over the Springboks, and many games before. I think they'll come out firing in this game. I just don't know if I don't think the Wallabies will have enough to just live with them. I'm going to predict the All Blacks by 10 points myself. I think they will. I think they will win this one. Not comfortably, but I think there'll be a bit of a margin there, for sure. But that moves us into our second game of the weekend, which is in Durban at Kings Park Stadium, where the Springboks will face Argentina. Now, this is second v fourth in the group. Springboks on 10 points, Argentina on 9. Springboks coming off that back of that huge victory in Wellington, and they'll look to sort of try and take hold of this championship, really, because I think if they can get a good bonus point victory in this game, and then New Zealand and Wallabies maybe have a tight one, then they can maybe take control of this one. How do you reckon this game's going to
go? I think South Africa have got this in the bag. I think they'll be on a high. The atmosphere around camp will be really good because they've just set a record against one of the biggest rugby nations in the world. Beating the All Blacks by 33 points is no mean feat. Like, that's super duper impressive. So, and I think Argentina, yes, as good as they've been, I think their weaknesses were exposed quite a lot against Australia in the two games. For only the aggregate score to only sway in Australia's favour by 2 points, I think it would have been a bigger margin. They would have liked to have won by a bigger margin. It was Santi Carreras' boot that kind of won it in the second tests. Yeah, I think it still will be a South Africa victory. However, Argentina will do what Argentina do and give them a good game.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they've got anything up their sleeve, Argentina, they could potentially bring into this game? They're potent off the set piece and coming back when you look at the team news, Luke de Jager and Abelele Fassi out for South Africa, but they'll obviously have so much squad depth. A key bit for Argentina is their regular fly half, Thomas Albornoz, is coming back. Do you think him coming back could potentially cause any issues for the Springboks?
Yeah, I mean, he does bring a very niche creativity to Argentina's game, and it's something that is clearly often been catered around him. So it would be nice to see him back. It would be interesting to see how much of an impact he has on this game. Could it be enough to overturn South Africa? It could very well do, because we know that South Africa have a tendency sometimes to just go beyond the basics and overplay. But could they do it again against Argentina? Very possible. Are Argentina going to be there to turn up on the day and make the most of the chances? Who knows? I think they're the lowest scoring team in the tournament, so it's going to be difficult to get over the line and get those points when required.
And if I had to bug you for a prediction on this game, where would you see this one going?
I think I'd say South Africa by 9, but I think it'll be a comfortable 9 points. No, you're not going to think that's a close game. I think it'll be seen out quite early doors, and then it'll just be game management by South Africa. Try and limit the amount of injuries because they've been struck with quite a few already this tournament. So I think see it out early doors and then just soak and hold the pressure.
I would tend to agree with that assessment, to be fair. I think Argentina will provide some moments, particularly off that set piece, where I think they can be so potent. But I do see just South Africa being just that bit too powerful. I think they've had a couple of their results in this tournament where they've not turned up and they've been turned over, and I think Rossi will be hammering it into them. That they can't be making any more mistakes in this tournament, and I think they'll just manage that game. It'll be interesting to see what way he goes for the team news or for the team. You can never predict what he's going to do. Really, I think someone put in our comments because we were discussing his tactics and stuff like that, and said we don't know what he's going to do. We're just along for the ride, and I think that's the perfect way of summing that up. But I think they will win this one, and I'll probably say they'll win it by 12 points. So maybe slightly more than your prediction, Dom, but very, very similar. But that is our roundup for the Rugby Championship this week and our previews for that. So we look forward to that and getting up at all hours of the morning to watch the Belislu Cup. So that'll be fun. But we move into a couple of the domestic leagues in Europe, and we've had a couple of big results in the top 14 this week. A key one that's just standing out to me, Dom, I'm sure it'll stand out to you too as well, is Montpellier beating Toulouse 44-14. That is the defending top 14 champions getting put to the sword like that. A couple of the other results here: Bordeaux-Bègles beating Montauban 71-24. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Oh, it's not. Okay. Lyon beating Stade Francais 42-37. Very tight game there. Racing 92 making it 2 from 2 against Perpignan winning 28-15. Strasbourg beating Bayonne 48-17. 3 in a row for Castres, I believe. Then, as I say, losing to Clermont-Auvergne 50 points to 27 there. So a lot of interesting results there. Obviously that Toulon La Rochelle game has been postponed. But looking at those results for this week, Dom, what do you make of all those?
I think I said it this last week. If not, I definitely thought it. Montpellier are going to be a good outfit this season. And it wasn't a difficult, it wasn't an easy Toulouse squad. They still had Kinghorn, they still had Ramos and Marchand, Flamand, all playing. So it wasn't by any means an easy. They got let off, but by the looks of things, Montpellier came out fighting at the start. 3 tries in 6 minutes in the first half. 2 yellow cards at the start of the second half for Toulouse. So, yeah, it really looks like they just went, foot to the floor to begin with, and then rattled them a little bit at the start of the second half, and kind of carried that through, controlled the game, soaked it up, and saw it out. But incredible by Montpellier. Bordeaux also showing who's boss, to newly promoted Montauban.
He'll not be happy with that one. Look, it was he was really
liking the look of them,
hoping for Montauban. Yeah. Just to correct myself, Castro, that's actually their first victory of the season. I forgot it was two losses to start off with. Whoops. But yeah, no. Do you see there are a couple of sort of early starters here, Poe and in particular, winning 2 out of 3 of their games. Obviously in Europe, as we've spoken about before, and Lyon starting fast as well with 3 wins. Do you reckon any of these sides can cause an upset, or do you think it's sort of just going to be the old guard with Toulouse?
Yeah, I think it's just early doors, isn't it? I mean, Lyon have had quite a nice start to the season. They play Stade Francais, who haven't been firing on all cylinders for a couple of seasons. They've newly promoted Montauban as well, and a Racing side that lost, a key player in Owen Farrell, and any team that loses a player like that is going to struggle. So they've had a bit of luck at the draw, I'd say. Pau, I was quite surprised that they lost, considering how well they'd started. But equally, a side like La Rochelle, they're looking like they're struggling a little bit maybe. Bayonne, I was quite surprised that they lost as well, because they've done some good business. They've, from the first 2 looking like it was going to be a pretty similar season to last. But no, it's just all over the place. And it's nice that, you have different teams who, win previous week and then get a surprise victory another week and then get a surprise loss. But, it's really exciting to see how it's all panning out so far. But 3 games in, I still don't think you can look at that table and think, that'll stay pretty similar. I think there's going to be a lot more changes to come.
It's the most unpredictable, I think, even with their divisions in the Pro D2 as well, and the third tier, the National. I think it's just the most unpredictable country to predict. Well, results in really, but we'll move over to the Prem Rugby Cup, and I had a couple of the results here as well. Bath losing at home to Exeter, 23-14. Leicester winning 25-17 against Harlequins. Northampton nearly putting 50 points on Saracens, winning 49-34. And then the big, the big talking point of the weekend, Dom, Louis Rees-Zammit returning to Kingsholm. And a winning side, winning 40 points to 24, and of course getting that try. What did you make of Louis Rees-Zammit's return?
It's good for the game. It's good for Wales. I'm sure everybody will be absolutely over the moon that he's got on the scoreboard. But yeah, did let himself down with the yellow card as well. So we'll maybe
it was a bit of a crazy game for him, to be fair. But yeah, that's the roundup of that results. Obviously still in the group stages of that. But we've got another league coming back. United Rugby Championship returns this weekend coming, and we've got a couple of big results. Obviously, Dom, as an Englishman, perhaps you're not watching as much of the United Rugby Championship as you would be watching the English Premiership, or the English Prem as they're now calling it. But a couple of big games to start off with. You got Stormers versus Leinster, which should arguably be the sort of the match of the round, with two sides with great pedigree in the competition. Glasgow versus Sharks, two semi-finalists last year. Ulster versus Dragons, obviously my home team. Hopefully they get off to a good start. The Bulls play Ospreys. I'm sure Razzie will be looking at that one. He'll be hoping for Jeg White's downfall on that one. Zebra playing Edinburgh. Scarlets playing Munster. Connacht playing Benetton. And then right here in Cardiff, we've got the Lions travelling to face Cardiff at the Cardiff Arms Park. Dom, what would you sort of reckon for the URC this season? Do you see it sort of being Leinster sort of consolidating their hold on the competition, or do you see any sides sort of potentially upsetting?
I think if there's going to be a team to upset them, it's going to be a South African one. The Sharks, I think they're Luke's team, aren't they? They've been looking pretty good. Obviously, the Stormers as well did very well last season, but I mean, when you've got practically the entire Irish team in your starting 11, you're starting 15, you're obviously going to be a big advantage. So, I can't really see anybody else causing too much of an upset amongst those. But it's just going to be the same old URC. I'm not a massive watcher, like you say, but I'll definitely be tuning in a little bit more to keep an eye on and see how it'll pan out and for future tournaments with when it comes to the Six Nations and URC and internationals and whatnot.
We'll make you an honorary Ulster rugby fan. You've got the right colours on there. The red and the white there, and the black as well. Actually, to be fair, you're going well there. I'm liking that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think Leinster do have quite a whole, as you mentioned, with all their internationals in this competition. The Sharks made the semi-finals last year. It'll be interesting to see if they can push on from that. Obviously, they have a lot of their South African internationals as well. But the Bulls, I think, have been a very strong team in the last couple of years as well. Interesting to see, I think, Scarlets this year, Dom, after making Europe last year. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty around Welsh rugby, as we've touched on in a couple episodes now. So we don't know really how that's going to affect things, but I think the Scarlets, if you're looking at a Welsh side, cause maybe a couple of upsets and maybe make the playoffs again and see if they can push towards perhaps a semi-final there. But it'll be interesting to see. But just to finish on a couple of news headlines from the world of rugby, as we do every week, we have got a couple of so the Rugby Championship, which we have very much enjoyed this past summer, is set to be scrapped in its current state, in the current way of the 6 games, sort of the double headers, until 2029, so 4 years. So this is after obviously the rugby's greatest rivalry trilogy between the Springboks and the All Blacks has been announced to be played for on a sort of a yearly basis. So in its current guide, we won't see what we've seen this year for another 4 years. I think it'll be sort of a reduced version for a a number of years. I'll just go through the reports here. So it's coming out of the Sydney Morning Herald. So there will be sort of 3 test series between the Springboks and the All Blacks, as I say. And then it'll be sort of like a reduced series in 2028 as well. So what do you make of this in terms of reducing the Rugby Championship down from its current version?
I think with any kind of change, I'm more likely to be on board with it if it means that everybody's still getting good opportunities, good rugby being played. So from this, are Argentina going to be still playing top level teams and pushing themselves to be the best version of themselves? Are New Zealand just going to be having the same for all teams? Are they going to be playing good oppositions and getting good rugby being played? If it means to sacrificing this tournament. So hopefully the answer is yes, but it looks like it's just going to be taken over by lots of tours, and rather than the setup that they've had now. But yeah, as I say, so long as what's being replaced is better and we're getting a better offload as rugby fans and also as for the rugby nations, then I think no harm, no foul.
Yeah, it was a very interesting. I thought you'd be a wee bit more damning on that. I think Luke will certainly probably. Well, actually, I don't know if Luke will be more damning because he'll get to play the All Blacks, three tests a year, which I think after last week will be something that appeals to him. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what is replaced there. The 2027 version will be shortened anyway due to the Rugby World Cup, and then that 2028 is not going to take place. So it's scheduled that 2029 will be the next time we see sort of something like we saw this week or this year rather. So do you think after what we've seen this year in terms of a no traditional rugby championship in 2026, do you think after the sort of how tight it's been in this year's rugby championship and all the drama we saw, all the great matchups we saw, that this is maybe a wee bit premature to make a move like this, or do you not see it like that?
No, I can see that side of things, because if you've got a structure that's working, a system that's working, then why change it? But they've clearly got something up their sleeve that they think will perform better and benefit everybody involved. Sometimes you've got to give that a chance. If not, if after these few years they've trialed it and it's not really worked out, in 2029 they can go back to me like, look, last 4 years haven't worked. Let's just go back to the old system. Let's do this now, year on, year out, and we can carry on from there. But equally, you've got to try these things to realise they don't work. So.
That's it. Well, we'll see how it pans out. I think this is just as this is sort of what's been released in the Sydney Morning Herald for now. So it's not really confirmations as so much as these are the changes that are set to be taking place, and what's been released into the media as of now. So we'll see the sort of the confirmations coming out, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks when the Rugby Championship's finished. So yes, and then just to touch on a last bit of news here is Liam Williams, who has moved to Newcastle Red Bulls, Dom. Now, I remember you saying the other week there that Newcastle Red Bulls, this one's sort of coming back to bite you in a sense, where Newcastle Red Bulls, they brought in a load of signings, but none of them are necessarily big experience, top level international players. Well, now they've got one in Welsh international Liam Williams, obviously serial winner with Saracens in the Premiership. What do you make of this one? Season-long deal. He's passed the medical just over the weekend there, and he'll be joining on a short-term contract.
Yeah, I think any player like that who's got international pedigree will always be of great contribution to any side. So yeah, they're lucky to have him, that's for sure. And with Christian Wade in there as well, I think they've got 2 good leaders in the backs who can...
2 British and Irish Lions.
2 British and Irish Lions as well, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's definitely positive. However, I mean, I was reviewing the Prem kind of transfers that have been going in and out this summer, and saw that Saracens had let Liam Williams go, and now that he's made this decision, so I think he only played 4 games for Saracens last year. So he's not necessarily going to be the biggest impact on the pitch, I don't think, but definitely in the dressing room. I think for the players who have probably faced a lot of hardship over the last 3-4 seasons, it's definitely going to be a nice a breath of fresh air to have someone who's going, look, boys, we can actually win this now. We've forget what's been going on for the last however many years. Like this is now we can actually start winning games again. So yeah, I think he'll be a good asset and for the changing room, if anything else.
Absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on, whether he can sort of pick up some really, really good form there alongside Christian Wade there, and see how the Newcastle Red Bulls do this season. I think that'll be the biggest sort of question, really, with all these new changes happening to the club. But that's been episode 12 of season 3 of the Rock and Roll Show. Thank you very much for joining. We've got another bumper weekend of rugby action coming with the Women's Rugby World Cup final and round 5 of the Rugby Championship, like the many other domestic leagues. But it's been a pleasure previewing all that for you guys, and we will see you on the next one. Goodbye.